Hey, welcome to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction. More importantly, it's about recovery. I'm Casey Scott. That's Dr. Matt Woolley, who I just found out off air has never had a shower beer.
Never had one.
So do you know what a shower beer is?
Tell us.
So it's a beer that you have in the shower. So it's like maybe you're getting ready for the night and you want a pregame, but you don't have time to have beer and shower, so you combine them both.
My question to you is...
Okay, bring it on.
How long do you spend in the shower?
Well...
I guess you're a clean guy, but I mean...
I'm a recovering alcoholic, so I guess the question back to you would be is, how long did you think I was away from a beer?
There you go.
You know what I mean? I was like, it was one of those things. But you know, like, I say shower beer, and our guest here is Seneca, and you can jump in here real quick because you've had a shower beer?
Absolutely.
I bet you most addicts know what a shower beer is because as an addict, most people find a way to do both of them at the same time. And maybe they figure out they can do that so they can do the other.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the addict brain, you're always finding workarounds so that you can drink or use or whatever, right?
Well, we're going to talk to our guest Seneca in just a bit. But before that, we'd like to talk and kind of catch up and do the mental minute. But last night I was thinking of something. So I was in the shower, no beer.
No beer.
I was singing, and that's where I'd like to do some thinking.
Sure.
And I was singing Kiss the Girl by the Little Mermaid. Because I just put my phone in there and I hit shuffle.
So I would have to say that, the Disney tunes, I'm pretty guilty of singing those too. Because they sound good in the shower.
She don't got a lot to say, but there's something about...
There you go.
Like my acoustics in the shower.
They're amazing.
Sound amazing.
Right.
And
you're Beyonce every time.
I was thinking of something, and it was kind of my motivating factor to get sober. It was kind of my motivating factor to get on TV, kind of my motivating factor to get into my career. And I've said it to you before, and I cherish when people bet against me. For some reason, it gives me motivation.
Yeah. It's your oppositional side.
But I'm now at a point in my life where I want you to bet on me.
Fair.
Because... truth be told, it's easier doing the right thing. I mean, it really is.
Very true.
It's easier doing the right thing. And I mean, I'm a little late to the game on that. You know what I mean? And
hey, never too late.
And trying to figure things out. But I want to be a person now to my kids, to my girlfriend, to my family, to all that depend on me, that where you can bet on me. I don't want to be a surprise anymore. There's like somehow he seems to pull it off.
Yeah.
And I'm moving that way into my life and into a headspace where, you know what? Bet on Casey because he's going to do it. If he said he's going to do it, he's going to do it.
So what does it take to get people to shift their attitude about you?
Well, I mean, once again, it's the same thing that's got me sober. It's I have to do the work. And it's not something that's going to happen overnight.
It's like building trust, right? It's consistency over time.
And don't get me wrong. Like, I just talked to my producer this morning, and she says, do you have next week booked? And surprisingly, I do. And she goes, well, what about the week after that? And I was like, I didn't know that was a thing. And she's like, she goes, yeah.
2 weeks in a row?
She goes, yeah, calendars. You can do it whatever you want, you know? Yeah. And so, but for my whole life, it's kind of like that Seinfeld where he throws $20 out the window. And reaches
Even Steven?
Yeah. My life has been somewhat that.
Yeah.
And it worked until it didn't work, and then that's what brought me to my rock bottom. But now I'm trying to transition to a point in my life where you can bet on me. I want you to bet on me.
Oh, I believe that 100%.
And I know that it's going to take work, and it's not me just proclaiming it on a podcast where people are like, oh, he said it, so we're going to bet on him.
Right.
But I want my track record from here forth to prove that I'm a good bet.
Yeah. Well, you do what you say you're going to do. In fact, you announced before we went on the air that you finally went to the doctor like you said you were going to do.
I did. I went to the doctor.
Yeah. How'd that work out?
So they did, is it a lipid panel?
Yeah. For your cholesterol and all that? Yeah.
I signed up for a colonoscopy.
You signed up? Yeah.
Yep. And so
did you do the warm-up check in the office?
No.
That's good.
I don't.
That's an uncomfortable one.
Yeah, I don't go that far on the first date.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was like, maybe I'll have to come back.
I had a colonoscopy last year.
Yeah.
And when I turned 50, and now they're saying you're supposed to do it when you're 45.
Yeah. So I'm 4 years late.
Yeah, you're a little bit late on that. So I'll tell you, that's a really good time.
Yeah. No, I think you're lying to me. But I went and got all my stuff checked because recently, like I told you, we found a family family friend who at the age of 44 had a stroke.
Oh, yeah.
And a healthy guy, a good-looking dude, and just, he's my brother. And my daughter came to me and was like, "Hey, Dad," and this is what got me. She goes, "I want you to be able to walk me down the aisle." I was like, "Are you getting married?" She goes, "No," because I need
not
you
till this summer.
Yeah, no. I go, "I need you to go check on your health."
She really said that?
Yeah, she did.
Wow.
And so I was like, "Oh, you know what?" Because I hadn't been to a doctor in 4 years.
Yeah.
Since I went to rehab, now everything's on an app, and so I looked, and he was like, "You took this and this," and I was like, "I don't remember taking that." And then he goes, "Well, it says here rehab," and I was like, "Yeah, I must have taken it in rehab."
That's why I don't remember.
I'm not taking that stuff anymore.
My brain was a little foggy.
But my cholesterol, my triglycerides, my testosterone, everything's in normal levels, and so
Good for you.
I'm doing okay.
That's awesome.
I could shed a few pounds.
Yeah.
And now I'm currently trying to get off soda pop because.
That's terrible for you, man.
Dude, I gave it a hard run.
Yeah.
When Leslie moved in, the lovely Leslie, my girlfriend.
Yeah, is she a soda drinker?
Oh, well, she's not a soda drinker. She's a nurturer. So if you say you want something, you write it down on a list. Surprisingly, it shows up in the house the next day.
Wow.
And so we had a freezer full of soda pop and cheese and trail mix. And my family's
All your
not
favorites.
My family's not like me where they can ration.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it's there, let's go.
We're going 100% all in. Yeah.
And so we were burning through a lot of soda pop. I mean, it was a sort of, and I was like, "Hey, we can't do this anymore."
Yeah.
Because if it's there, I'll drink it.
Well, it's totally addicting, and it's also kind of emotionally and behaviorally addicting. Like, think about the sound.
Oh yeah, no.
And the fizz.
Oh yeah.
Little dances on your tongue as you drink it.
Oh yeah.
It's nice and cold.
Oh yeah.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, but but
I told you I got off it.
Yeah,
yeah, and I rarely ever have one anymore, and I feel so much better.
So I'm not completely off of it. I have a soda pop in the morning.
Okay.
And
in the morning?
Well, yeah, I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, bro. Oh. I need a little caffeine. I don't drink coffee. I'm probably the only guy that ever went to rehab who doesn't drink coffee.
Have some iced tea.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Right here. Am I from the South? No.
Yeah.
No.
Come on.
No, I don't want tea.
Okay, what soda do you drink in the morning?
Diet Mountain Dew.
Diet Mountain Dew.
That's my jam.
All right.
So I get a Diet Mountain Dew, and then I've been trying to shift to water, and I feel a little more energy. And so, I think that's kind of apropos of life. I mean, we're always evolving. And when you think you're doing good, you're like, well, wait a minute, I could probably re-examine this, and I'm probably doing a little too much of this. And
so as Carl Rogers talked about becoming,
I don't even know him.
He's a famous psychologist.
Okay.
Talked about becoming, and the healthiest people throughout their entire life, they maintain this idea of I'm always becoming who I want to be. They're not trying to find an end point, that they're in the process. And so that's kind of what you're saying, is that if we're always in the process of improving without this need to be at some artificial end, I'm fit enough or I'm, whatever, then you're just always in this process of becoming a better person. That's where happiness is.
I think complacency is the death of life.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And so, just keep moving. Life's a journey. It's not a destination. And just keep it going. It sounds like we're kind of moving and segueing into Matt's Mental Minute.
We could do that right now. I have a couple things to talk about I think are pretty interesting. So first of all, I'm going to toot the horn of psychology.
Okay.
Okay, because we talk a lot about medicine on this show. What
does that horn look like?
It's big enough.
Okay, good.
But behavioral treatments, so therapies.
Yeah.
Cognitive and behavioral therapies. There's a new study out in JAMA, Journal of American Medicine.
Yeah.
American Medical Association.
Nobody
there you
cares.
Go. Yeah, it's JAMA. It's JAMA. Sounds cool. But what they were talking about here is they found that actually you save a lot of money and time if you include behavioral treatments, not just medical treatments, for substance abuse and alcohol abuse treatment. So they found that in this study, 400 U.S. people, 11% of the study had substance or alcohol use, and they decreased their pharmacy costs over time by 15 to 27 months, lower pharmacy costs, and increase in graduating from their programs versus those that just did medical treatments.
Okay.
Is that interesting to you at all? You don't look interested.
I think it's interesting. But I think for most people in substance abuse, behavioral therapy is a key component to their recovery.
Well, I was going to ask you what you thought about that because, a lot of times people feel like medicine taking a medication, that's the real deal.
I think that's counterproductive. I think you're just replacing something with another. And I'm not saying that there's not a valid use for that in recovery.
Right. Well, I think there is.
And for detoxing, and whether it's mood enhancements or depression or whatever it is, underlying facts, I think there's definitely a part of that. But I think so much for addicts out there is the behavioral component to it.
Yeah. But the key, 15 to 27 months, they still had progress. So the key is you can't just do it for the 30 days you're in rehab.
No, but so the 30 days or 45 days like I did in rehab, basically those are to break old habits and create new ones. And most people who succeed in recovery continue those habits. It's not like most people think, well, I'm going to go to rehab for 30 days and I'm going to be fixed.
Right.
No, that's the old way of thinking, is that 30 days is going to cure all.
I think that thinking on our show, at least, seems to be associated with people's relapses. They kind of say that as then they preface telling us a story about a relapse.
Yeah, but that's the way people used to think about it. Yeah. I mean, even in my addiction, my ex-wife.
Like, okay, you're good.
You're good. Yep. Well, you went to rehab, so you're done. Well, no. Basically, that 30 days was to stop old habits, start beginning new ones, and then the real work begins. Right. The rehab is a safe space to detox, to take yourself out of a situation and learn new coping mechanisms and skills to help you on your road to recovery.
Right. It's the beginning of that journey, right?
It really is. But most people thought it was the beginning and the end to your journey of recovery.
Yeah.
And that's just not the facts.
Well, I always, you know me, I like numbers. I like to see that things really work. People's opinions are fine. But when we're talking about trying to recommend things to large groups of people, we want to know what really works. And so it's nice to come across these articles. That's certainly not the only one. But research shows time and time again that if you do the behavioral health treatments, you're going to have long-term positive outcomes, especially if you're trying to be in recovery from drugs and alcohol.
I love it.
But here's the fun one.
Okay.
I'm going to have you weigh in on this. We're going to have our guest weigh in on this.
All right.
If Josh has anything to say, he could weigh in on this.
Sure.
But the question, this is a little review about, the question is, should we let people take illegal drugs under medical supervision? And currently in the world, there are about 100 centers in countries like Canada and Switzerland and other places where that is allowed. You can come in and take illegal drugs in a safe space under the supervision.
With like a shaman or
like Amsterdam?
Well, Amsterdam, I think you can just do whatever you want, from what I understand. But there are actual centers that are medical centers where anybody who's using can come in and use in that space. And any illegal drug is fine. And in the United States, there have been some trial studies. In New York, both in Manhattan and Harlem, this doctor, Arthur Kaplan, is the one who wrote this article, and he's reviewed those processes there, and he has some interesting takes on it. He feels like that it saves money because a lot of the people that overdose in the community, then the community is responsible for taking care of them. I'm not sure that's a great reason to save money, but it saves money. But there's also a decreased risk to the first responders who don't have to go into these dangerous places maybe and try to help people that are overdosing. Fewer syringes are littering parks and public places in these 100 cities around the world where this is happening. And there's less, financial burden to the community. He also feels like, so far, they've saved about 600 lives in New York over the 1 year period because of reducing overdoses. So my question is, now that's it. That's just what this article says. I don't know that that's proof necessarily, but that's his review of it. But it's an interesting question, and there are 100 centers around the world that are doing it, so it's not just a one-off kind of deal. It must be popular enough that people around the world are putting time and resources into it. So my question is, what do you think about that, just opinion-wise, and would that be something anybody in this room would like to see here in Salt Lake City?
Well, I'm going to pass this over to my friend Seneca, just for the fact, and we're going to hear this in his story a little bit later, but we'll talk about it now.
Yeah.
You spent 2 months on Skid Row in L.A.
Yes.
Openly using.
Yes.
And I assume everybody else around you, for the most part, was?
Pretty much, yeah.
Was it a safe environment?
It was not safe, no. There was a lot of people around, but back to that, If you're talking about like microdosing mushrooms, psilocybin, like little things like that,
this study is
heroin,
just you're using
heroin, whatever.
You're using illegal drugs.
It's maybe they're putting a Band-Aid.
It's not a therapeutic environment
I think they're putting
necessarily.
a Band-Aid over the problem.
This is a bad choice.
It's not going.
But what about his claim that it helps reduce overdose risk? If someone's going to use anyway. So here's the theory behind this, because the reason I bring this up is it doesn't sit right with us, right? Yeah. But the idea is, hey, these people are going to use anyway in your community. They're out there using. They're littering parks with drug paraphernalia. They're not safe for themselves, probably not for other people as well. They're in a high risk situation. We've talked to a lot of them over the 4 years.
So it's like a free
here.
zone.
So it's like you come in here. And you're safe. You're not going to be arrested or anything. And you can use and you have a place to be safe and clean. And there are medical people that can check on you. Yeah. So the idea is it cleans up the community and keeps.
Do they have a needle exchange in Salt Lake City?
They do.
Okay. Yeah. So they do that. They have those in L.A. It was open in L.A. I got busted. I don't know how many times, literally shooting up by the police, and they just said, put that away and let me go. It's that kind of environment in Los Angeles.
Well,
I don't know how it is
they
in
can't
Salt Lake
arrest
City.
everybody. They fill up the jails.
No, the jails are full. Yeah. They can't.
And we have overcrowding issues.
Yes, and so it's a huge problem. And then you introduce fentanyl into the mix, and I don't know when that study was, but
last year.
Was it last year? Yeah. So Narcan, also is another big one that helps. Fentanyl is just a killer, and it's in everything. I watched people when I was down there, so that was 4 or 5 years ago when that kind of got introduced into L.A. And I watched people drop left and right. I always had Narcan in my pack. And I saved like 30 plus people's lives with Narcan.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
CPR.
I think that's wonderful.
And I think the study, I understand the reasoning and the thought behind it, and I think there's probably a lot more to it than we don't know, but it sounds kind of like child-proof in your house. You know what I mean? Just giving them a safe zone to do that. Now, if you introduce therapy, you introduce options for them to get out of that, but if this is just a free zone...
Yeah.
The whole goal is to get people off drugs.
So that's my thought, and that's kind of part of this is that they have resources available to them if they want to start to, we talk about pre-contemplation and contemplation leading to behavior change. Yeah. Like if you're an addict and you're in that mindset, but you're feeling hopeless, desperate on the streets, you're using, and I don't know anybody who's at that level who is enjoying their use, right? It's not a party anymore. No, it's a misery.
But it becomes they're so scared of the
survival.
Detox.
Right.
They're so scared of the detox.
So I don't know. I'm intrigued by this thought of like creating a safe space that's medically supervised with options for people to investigate the idea of getting clean and sober, what that would look like. Because a lot of addicts, what mindset goes along with addiction? Hopelessness. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're hopeless. I'll never be able to afford it. I'll never be able to do it. Nobody cares about me. Nobody loves me enough. Again. Right? No, that's part of what keeps people from seeking treatment. So I think this is an interesting idea. I don't know if every community could embrace it because of cultural beliefs and things like that, but the reality is things like needle exchanges have been shown to make improvements in communities' lives and people's lives. This is kind of taking that to another level, but New York's trying it, and it seems to be working. Yeah.
So. You could debate a lot of this stuff in that article, but when it gets to the point of saving 600 lives,
that's hard to.
It's all worth it.
That's hard to overlook. And the reality is, punishment doesn't create sobriety.
No.
That we know, and that I think we need to look past as a society. We need to look past just this punishment mentality. Because it's illegal, we're just going to punish, and addiction needs to be looked at differently. And I'm open to exploring ideas that go past punishment and do other things.
I love it. Yep. Hey, so you've been listening to Project Recovery. You heard a little bit from our guest, Seneca Higley. He's going to be our guest today. We're going to find out more about his life and what he's doing. But before we get to that real quick, you went to dinner with my mom last night. Did she pay or did you?
She did.
Yeah. Good old Robin. Stick around. More Project Recovery. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back to Project Recovery. I'm Casey Scott. That's Dr. Matt Woolley. He's a clinical psychologist. Our guest today, Seneca Higley. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good.
I'm going to show you how.
One of the best names we've had on our show.
Oh, Seneca's
by the way.
cool.
Yes.
Well,
the whole thing.
Wait, hold on.
Seneca Higley? Come on.
Hey, Seneca.
That's awesome. That's like a character in a novel.
Give him a little auction chant right now. Come on, just do it.
I knew this was going to come.
Come on, just do it.
And how many here now? So give that $85, 85 7 with you here to be a 7.5, 9,000 here, 9,000 here, 9,000 here. Sold 87.50. All right, let's get back to the podcast.
Wow, that is amazing.
So he's an auctioneer. I have known about
Holy
Seneca
cow.
and known Seneca for a majority of my life. And this is going to show you how Ogden this podcast is today. Seneca is currently living in the house next to my mother, renting it for 6 months.
Okay.
We just recently purchased his father's home up in Lava.
Lava. Nice.
And he went to dinner last night with my older brother and my mom for my brother's birthday.
Which I used to go duck hunting with Yancey 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so
you guys are like
his
like
brother.
brothers.
He's a brother. Yeah. And that's he's a family friend, and we love him. And when I found out he was going to be back in town because he bounces back between here and Lake Havasu, I was like, we got to get you on the podcast. And so we were lucky enough that it works today.
Awesome.
So for those who don't know, and I'm going to hear some of this for the first time as well, where does the story of Seneca Higley begin?
Well, it starts as a young kid. You know, I was 4.5, 5 years old when my mom died. And so, you know, right out the chute, you know, life was kind of unfair to me. Insecure. My father was a good man, but what was he didn't know what to do with a 5-year-old boy, and his wife just died, and all he knew was how to work. And so it was, it was a tough upbringing. I thought it was normal until I got into recovery, and I looked back, and I'm like, that was so dysfunctional.
Did you have siblings?
I did. I had a half brother and sister from my mom, so they moved away, and then I have a younger brother. It's like 10 years younger.
Oh, so
but he was never really involved.
That might have been hard because now the family went, in very small. Just
Absolutely.
You and your dad.
Yeah, just me. Just
You know,
me and
you
my
said
dad.
something that's interesting, and you thought it was normal. I thought my childhood was normal. Most people think their childhood is normal until you talk to other people, and you go,
Yeah.
But then it makes you beg the question, what is normal? You only know what you know.
Right, yeah.
And, but here you are living with your dad, trying to find your way in this world, just lost your mom. Do you remember losing your mom?
I remember traumatic memories, like little video clips. And they were all of fights. I rolled down the stairs when I was 3 years old and had my first concussion. I remember that, to where the lights went out. I broke my arm when I was 4. My story has a lot of broken bones in it, by the way. And so, when they'd fight, things like that, I remember the last night my mom, when she left, I had this feeling that I was never going to see her again. And I cried and I threw a fit, and she left, and she got in a rollover accident on the way back and died. Rollover accident, yeah. Wow. So, it was tough. It was super tough.
So what was your upbringing like with just you and your father?
Well, he was either working or at the bar. And so there was a lot of late nights, when I'm 8, 9, 10 years old, 11, where I'm home alone and just absolutely scared to death, out in the country. And all I remember is just calling
Where
my
was
dad.
this?
In Hooper. I grew up in Hooper, Utah.
Okay.
When it was country.
When it was country.
When it was country, yeah.
And so a lot of time by yourself.
A lot of time by myself.
So you taking care of yourself, getting everything, making your own meals, that kind of stuff?
Yep. We didn't have a lot of money, which as a kid doesn't really matter. You really don't know. Like, I was fine with like those G.I. Joe, those
Army men, Green Army men.
Absolutely, man. And a BB gun, and I was set for, the day. So, money didn't really affect me that much, but I started getting into sports. I was a baseball, football player, like most kids, played basketball, and that led into high school, where I started. Let's move back.
Okay.
So my dad did a lot of things that I didn't like, and so as a kid, I recognized that with alcohol. So I did not want to drink. I hated alcohol. I was never going to drink. When I was in 10th grade, one of my friends spiked my Mellow Yellow with Everclear. And I'll never forget when that was going down, touched my mouth and was going down, that warm sensation, and then almost like the immediate, like, oh my God, this is awesome.
Euphoria.
So I knew I was an alcoholic right off the bat, but it was, I didn't start drinking all the time, just every once in a while.
Pretty normal high school career.
Pretty normal high school, yeah.
I think that happens a lot for kids who grow up with an alcoholic parent, is they see that behavior and they see what it causes, and they vow to themselves when they're younger, I'm never going to do that.
I pray to God that it happens with my kids.
Yeah.
I mean, I really do. Like, I hope that my daughters and my son don't go down the same road I do.
Yeah, but unfortunately, like your story, Seneca, if you have that predisposition for alcohol to be your DOC, then when there is an opportunity to taste it, to have it, sometimes that resolve goes away. So I think educating kids beyond just their own, like you talk to your kids a lot about it.
Yeah.
And your kids have been exposed to the recovery world.
But I can tell you, my parents never talked to me about it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until my dad did this very podcast that I found out that his dad was an alcoholic.
So you didn't even know that?
No.
Wow.
I mean, he died when I was a young age, and we didn't hear much about my grandpa, and I didn't know him all that well. But to find out he was an alcoholic on this podcast, I was like, huh.
Well, getting over that shame-based culture is important.
Yeah.
So the high school years pretty good for you?
They were. We sold our place in Hooper when I was in 11th grade or 10th grade, and moved over to 21st Street in Ogden. We had a public auto auction there, and I lived up top of it. And so immediately we started having parties. And then the weekends we started partying a lot. And everything was kind of associated with alcohol. I worked hard during the week, drank hard with the boys, had fun, and that kind of carried over into when I went to auction school when I was 17. I graduated high school when I was 17.
And so did you graduate early because you just didn't see a sense in it, or you knew what you wanted to do and pursue it?
I was one of those guys that halfway through the year, I didn't have to go to senior year. And
you had enough credits?
Had enough credits, yeah. And so I started working a lot. God, sorry.
You're fine.
And
so you decided to go to auction school.
Decided to go to auction school.
Okay,
I was going to Weber State.
Before we get to that, during high school, did you have any problems that alcohol or drugs, or was it just alcohol? Did you have any problems that that kind of creeped in or presented themselves?
None. Nope. None.
That's dangerous for a young guy because then you think, oh, it's not a problem.
Yeah.
Living a pretty charmed life.
Living a pretty charmed life, yeah.
It's, I think, a little bit better if kids get in trouble early.
Yeah.
And then they might realize that it's a problem. But if you're doing all the big stuff, graduating early, playing sports, having friends, and partying hard.
It seems like everything's okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you go to auction school while attending Weber State University.
Yes. Billings, Montana.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
Auction school?
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah.
Casey?
My dad went to it.
Really?
Yeah.
How did I not know that was a thing?
Another part of the small world.
Yeah.
I thought maybe if you could just talk fast then.
Well, no, there's a whole cadence and math, and you're finding it's a thing. And then and there's a ton of money in it, which we're going to find out. You found yourself very successful. I remember my dad telling me once about Seneca Higley, and he's like, I met this kid. And his cadence is amazing. He's wonderful. He can auction so beautifully. But the coolest thing about him is he can go from English to Spanish, Spanish to English, back and forth flawlessly. And my dad, who'd been auctioning his whole life and was very good at it, said, this kid is amazing.
Wow. There you go.
Yeah. So I got back from auction school and was going to Weber State, and I started doing auctions a couple a week because I knew people in the industry. And before, probably when I was 20 years old, I quit Weber State because I started making enough money. I started making real good money, and I'm like, I can always go back to college, right?
Right.
And so I started auctioneering full time, and that career, I was doing 5 auctions a week probably. And that it was where I started seeing a lot more partying, where, I worked in Vegas every Thursday night and Friday.
So I was going to ask, is it like a gig thing where it's like you get a reputation, you start getting asked to go to bigger auctions, that kind of stuff? Okay.
Yes. And I started as a ringman to get in and then become an auctioneer. And so it takes some time, but...
a ringman is the guy that sits around and goes, yep. Yep.
Bid spotter.
And that gives,
I've never been to an auction.
Oh,
I just
fun.
realized that.
And so you go, yep, and then that gives him the
I've seen him on
auctioneer.
TV. That's
Yeah,
I
we gotta
just
get
realized
you
I've
out.
never
When
been
I
there.
say yup, that gives him the okay to move on to a higher number. That means I've already got somebody at 55. Let's move
Okay.
to 60, and then he'll keep the chanting going.
That's like this whole culture. I never know
absolutely.
anything
and
about.
it's wonderful. And he's being modest. He was the Wonder Boy. He was doing
Well,
wonderful
it sounds
things.
like your dad threw pretty big compliments.
And he was making really good money.
I was making good money. Working in Phoenix for a year, Utah Auto Auctions, the ones around here, public sales. Me and my dad had a public auto auction as well. So I was working 6-7 days a week.
But let me ask you this. How long are you working on that day?
Like 4 hours.
Okay, that's what I thought. So you're making big money.
Yeah.
You're working a lot of days, but you have a lot of free hours. It sounds
Absolutely.
like. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But what you don't understand is those 4 hours are intense.
Yeah.
No,
High
I know.
energy.
I believe it. But
and you
still,
know what I mean?
it's 4 hours. There's 20 other hours in the
And
day.
I know a little bit about his story, but this plays into it because for those 4 hours, 6 days a week, you need to be on.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not on, you're not making your people money.
Yeah,
And
I can see that.
and people are going, hey, what's happened to you, man?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm assuming, and I don't want to tell your story, that the nights bleed into the days.
The nights bleed into the days. The everybody would say, you go out with and party with the boys, you get up and you work with the men. And that was kind of the deal, you know. It's like play hard, work hard, go hard all the time. That was my mentality. And it's even to this day, it's still I have to sit back, slow myself, and pause. You know, and thank God sobriety has taught me a lot of those lessons. Just about pausing, you know, going through the 12 steps of AA. That's what I did, 12 steps of AA. And just learning everything about why you act this way and how to do contrary action, basically.
All right, we're jumping the shark here because we want to go back to where it begins to get messy for you.
Okay. It was when I was working in Vegas. I started taking like a couple pain pills and a Xanax before each auction.
Not because they were prescribed?
Not because they were prescribed, just because it made me feel good. When I wasn't feeling good, a Loratab would get me going to where I'd have energy and
feeling good like hungover?
No,
kinda?
feeling good like let's go.
Okay.
Like excited. You know,
right.
I felt ease. I felt at ease.
Are you a person that dealt with any anxiety growing up? Do you feel like there was
Well,
any
I
of that?
tell you, because of my home life situation, I know that I had horrible anxiety. I had stomach problems from the stress. So, yeah, I had that my whole life.
And I think we see that a lot with folks that self-medicate for their anxiety. And by the way, if you're a listener and you've never had anxiety on that level, you count yourself lucky because anxiety is pretty miserable. So I could see how when you have to perform,
Yeah.
you might want to feel your best and drop all that anxious stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that progressed over the years. You know, I was 30 years old. I was actually in the best shape of my life, physically, mentally, financially. I just got married for the first time. Everything was great, but I was still doing a couple of those Loratabs before an auction. Well, I ran out, and one of my buddies had an Oxycontin.
Yeah, okay.
And that literally wrecked my life. Oxycontin, 80s, back in the day where you could snort them. And within a year and a half, I was divorced. I had lost almost every job and financially bankrupt, spiritually bankrupt. Of course, I wasn't spiritual back then. I didn't believe in anything really. And so I was just, I got divorced and now I'm on my own again and I'm trying to get back, you know.
Financially ruined. How much do you think you spent?
I bet you I spent $100,000 of money on Oxycontin 80.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe it.
Yeah, they were expensive back then.
Yeah.
You know, and then of course, what happens after the money runs out? You turn to heroin.
So I feel like within a year, how quick did everything fall apart? I mean, do you remember? Walk me through a couple of the scenarios.
Start
because
with what it was like on that first Oxycontin, because I'm kind of curious. Like, that's a big jump from a Loratab to an Oxycontin. What was that first one like?
Well, I split it in half the first time, and it was just like I felt better than ever. You know, it was like 10 times what the Loratab was, and so I wanted that feeling again and again. You know, and that's really when the addiction went into full gear.
Yeah.
You know,
What I
fast
mean, how?
forward.
And so to Casey's question, how How quickly did that unravel for you?
Within a year, like a year. Yeah. Within a year.
But so you're saying a year, but you spent $100,000, lost majority of your jobs, and a wife.
And a wife.
And so, I mean,
and a beautiful wife, yeah.
What was the first to go?
The wife. The wife, then the job. Then I moved out and was back living in the condo at the auction.
How did it affect your marriage? Like what? Like she left.
I tried to hide it.
Okay.
I tried to hide it, but she was a special agent. So
what? Seriously?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew that part of it.
I better not say her name, but yeah, she was a special agent.
Special agent.
Yeah.
So hiding things from her was not so easy to do.
I'm pretty sure she took my hair follicle and like had it tested for drugs.
So you were married to CSI. Yeah. Okay. Wow.
So she just and look, I don't blame anybody who wants out.
No.
You know what I mean?
No.
And I'm sure you don't blame her.
I absolutely don't.
And she probably gave you a shot to get it right.
She didn't, but...
Special Agent Casey.
Yeah, no.
But she just says, I don't want a part of this. This is not in my life, and I'm done, and I'm out.
Absolutely.
And you can't hold that against somebody.
No, I mean, I think that sounds harsh.
Yeah.
However, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Seneca, probably somebody who knew what her boundaries were and was very strict about keeping her boundaries and goals and priorities in life. And,
absolutely.
And that just didn't fit her
nope. And
vision for
when
herself.
it was done, and she moved on. And so I was, that's when I experienced probably the worst anxiety in my life. I was having panic attacks, because I didn't want it to end. But at the time, I couldn't take accountability that I caused this, Mm-hmm. And so I was still running and gunning.
You brought up something because I remember feeling that for somebody, and I think we're cut from the same cloth, that we're fixers, and we can usually fix anything. Mm. And then when you come against something that you can't fix, and the first time in your life you're like, oh, it doesn't matter what I do.
Nope.
I'm not going to be able to get back what I had. No. And when you have to sit down and accept that and realize that it is your fault and there's no going back, I mean, that's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah. Yes, it was very tough.
And so,
I continued my path. In fact, actually,
you didn't consider that a rock bottom.
Well, I'll tell you what I did. I literally told myself I'm going to quit OxyContin. And I did. And I locked myself upstairs in that condo for 7 days, and at the time they were putting these pellets in your arm that were like an opiate blocker. I can't remember the name of it, but you had to be off of everything for 7 days. And so I did, and I went and I went to the doctor and I got that pellet put in because I was serious about quitting. And so they put it in. They tell me, okay, if you don't get sick within the first 2 hours, you're going to be fine. I get home and I'm like looking at my clock, because I cut it right to the 7 days, And so I get home and I'm looking at the clock. It's like 2 hours and 20 minutes. And I'm like, good, that's great. All of a sudden I go into this withdrawal that was just worse than any sickness I've ever had, And so it hit me, and it was like 2 hours or whatever. And then I started feeling better. But what it did to me is it gave me like full body, restless body syndrome. And so I had that for like the next 3 days, and it was driving me crazy. So what did I do? Started drinking and smoking crack to try to make it back.
I went right to the crack.
Yeah, I mean, I was with you with the drinking. I was like, I can see the reason.
I thought he was going to say weed, but he went right to crack.
How do you make that leap?
Oh, I was in agony. My whole body was just vibrating for 3 days in a row.
So to be fair, I've talked to a few people that have had similar experiences, and it just sounds like a living hell.
Yeah, and it was. Yeah. And so I was doing whatever I could to try to eliminate or make that go away a little bit. And this literally went on for a month, where I smoked and drank every day for a month, and then I think my father intervened, and because I was still selling at IAA. I was like 148 pounds, looked like shit, and my boss, good boss, he said, you're going to treatment and you're going to get help. And I'll hold your job for when you get back, but you're going to go to treatment. And so I went to treatment for 90 days. when I was 32 years old. It was the first time I ever went to treatment. And, you know, it was great. I got healthy. I gained back all that weight. Everything was good. And I moved to a sober living there in L.A. And on like the second to last day before I was going to come home and go back to live in Utah, a kid came in with a couple Loratabs. And he handed me 2, and without even thinking, I took those 2, drank, and put them down, and that obsession was back, just like that. Just like that. And so, you know, I struggled with this off and on for 10 years, you know, where I'd be clean, or, I've got arrested, gone to jail. I've had 4 DUIs in my life, you know. So alcohol has been a problem.
Is that one thing you always went back to self-medicate, was the alcohol?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, in the world of addiction, like, you know, my DOC was alcohol, and it sounds like yours toward the end was as well. But alcohol gets a pass for heavy narcotics users. You know what I mean? It's like, so I was smoking crack, I was doing meth, or I was doing heroin, but I'm not doing that anymore. I'm just drinking.
Yeah, like it's seen as not as bad.
Yeah, you know, and be like, well, and so they'll go like, well, he's not doing that anymore. He's just drinking. Well, eventually, whatever you're doing at the end is going to be the one that brings you down.
Right.
But you know.
Yeah. So, anyhow, you know, 10 years go by, get in trouble.
Did you spend some time in jail?
Again, spent some time in jail, 90 days here, 90 days there. And then when it came to prior to homelessness, me and my father, you know, been trying off and on, and our relationship is finally getting pretty damaged. And we're in Lake Havasu, Arizona, and, you know, my father said, I'm already lost and broken, okay? I've lost all of my friends. They pushed me away. I hate myself. I don't want to live anymore. And my dad comes to me and he says, I want you to do a DNA test because I don't think you're my son.
Oh man.
And this broke me.
Just out of the blue?
Well, not really out of the blue, but yeah, out of the blue. And so I just told him, I said, let's do it. I already know what the answer is, you know. And so we did it, came back 100%. He's my dad. And I said, I'm leaving. And he goes, what do you mean, where are you going? I says, I'm just leaving. I says, you don't get it. What you did, what you said to me, I was already broken prior to that.
Yeah.
Now I don't even want, I said, I'm leaving. I'm going to go find myself. I'm going to go on this spiritual journey. And so I did. I left and I went to Phoenix, Arizona. And that was the start of like my spiritual journey, which led to heavy drug use and alcoholism.
Well, we're going to hear more about that. You're listening to Project Recovery. That is Seneca Higley, and it's fascinating. And stick around. Hey, welcome back to Project Recovery. I'm Casey Scott. That's Dr. Matt Woolley. Our guest today, Seneca Higley, is just about to tell us about the time he goes on a spiritual journey that involves heavy narcotics, alcoholism, and homelessness. Did I get it right?
Absolutely.
So you find yourself in Arizona.
Yes.
Why is that the beginning place for a spiritual journey?
Well, it was the closest big city. And so my father's girlfriend at the time gave me a ride there and kicked me out and was happy to have me gone. You know, so
you just loaded up a backpack, or
I took a bunch of my stuff. I had enough money for a week at a hotel. So my thought was, I'm going to go out and get hired on an auction here, you know, and then I'm going to get a place to live and this. So I had this thought that maybe it was going to work out. Well, I had some people that shouldn't have been in my room, couple people that strong-armed robbed me, took everything I had. Now, in my safe, I had my passport, my social security card, birth certificate, money. So everything was instantly gone. So right off the bat, day 6, I am literally, and beat up, out the gate with nothing. Just a backpack and a couple, you know, changes of clothes. And so I hung around Phoenix for about a month, 2 drive-bys, got jumped again, and so I went to Vegas.
How do you live for a month in Arizona without a job, a driver's license, cash, a place to stay?
You know what? You get resourceful when you're homeless. It's like survival kind of kicks in. I didn't like to beg for money, but I had to a couple times. And I developed this really good, I've made amends to all these places, but I developed a really good, I could steal alcohol really good. And so I would sell it. And that was part of my hustle. And, I'm not proud of that, but,
Did the auctioneer skills come in and handy at all when you're
I forgot the best part of the story. So when I got robbed, I had dentures at that time. And I had them out, and they were soaking in this bag. Well, they stole everything, so they stole that bag. And so I went 2.5 years with no teeth, 0 teeth. So if you can imagine how my self-esteem was, just how low I was already broken, just lost. And so
when you say you got everything stolen, including your teeth?
Including my teeth.
Wow.
So you spend a month homeless on the streets of Phoenix, and then you decide you're going to go to a better place.
Going to go to Vegas.
Why Vegas?
Well, because I got the tattoo on my arm, Like I worked there for 13 years. Well, I found out really quick, when you don't have money in Vegas, it's not that fun. I got arrested 3 times in 3 days, and they got that facial rec on all the casinos. If you're at a Steve Wynn or one of those other guys that owns 4 different casinos, that facial recognition stuff
really works.
It really works. Yeah, I got arrested 3 times in 3 days. So my brother works in Vegas, and I called him and I said, "Hey, can you help me get to L.A.?" And so I went and stayed with him for a night, and he's like, "Are you sure you really want to do this?" Because my older brother lives in Overton, and he says, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I said, "Yeah." And so he gave me a bus ticket, and off I went to L.A. And
now why L.A.?
Well, because it was sunny. And I had gone to treatment there the first time.
Well, I got to give it to you. If you're going to be homeless,
absolutely.
You might as well be homeless in somewhere that's sunny.
I mean, I can't imagine being homeless in Salt Lake City in the winter.
Yeah.
So I went towards the beach.
Yeah.
Got off, and the bus station's right downtown. It's down by Skid Row. And I bounced around downtown for about a week, and then I can't remember how the conversation sparked, but there was a guy named Batman on 5th and Crocker that ran this block, okay? He ran this block. I saw him hit a woman or a man every day. Well, I got to talking to him because I was trying to get some drugs. And I don't know how the conversation started, but he was in the corporate world 5 years prior.
Really?
Something happened. Now he's like running 5th and Crocker, downtown Skid Row, and he was a bad dude. Like, it was a black block. I was like the only white boy on this block. So he kind of protected me. I ended up staying there 2 months. 2 months, sorry. And then I got ran out of there. Like, I literally thought I was going to get killed. It was not
so. For those who don't know, and I'm assuming that's probably the majority of the listeners,
sure.
What does Skid Row look like?
Skid Row, this was 5 years ago, so Skid Row, there was probably, 500 people in this 6-block district area. There's a mission, and it is just poverty. It's poverty, it's drugs, it's violence, and
do the police come in there very often?
They come through once in a while, but people are up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I have vivid memories of at 3, 4 in the morning just looking out my tent, watching guys go by and watching rats come out of the gutters and go around my tent and over to my neighbor because I always kept my place clean, But literally, they would go around my tent.
Did you feel safe? Or safer?
This is why most homeless people are on something. You have to be high to survive in that atmosphere. Like, it is brutal. You're constantly worrying about theft. You're constantly worrying about getting in fights, getting beat up, getting killed, getting shot, stabbed. So it's just, you have to almost stay high.
Well, it's a traumatic really experience.
It is.
You can never relax. You can never really sleep. Yep. And so that makes sense that if you weren't addicted when you got there, you'd be pretty quickly.
Yes. Yeah. And my heroin use really started right there from that point on. Skid Row.
You were telling me off air that you'd have to sleep with your backpack underneath you. You told me about one time you and your friends got robbed in broad daylight. Tell me about that.
Well, we had been up a few days. because it's tough to sleep. You're always watching your back. And we fell asleep at a Walgreens sidewalk on the back there. And I don't know how many hours we were asleep, but woke up and both of our backs had been taken while we were sleeping. That's in broad daylight.
Someone just came up and took it.
That's just how it was.
Yeah.
That's just how it was. You had to protect your stuff. I've been stabbed. I got stabbed by a guy named King, big black guy, running the block. He was in a psychosis and jumped me, beat me up, and stabbed me, in the arm. Thank God I blocked it. But, it's a rough life.
So I think people are curious, how do you find yourself getting out of Skid Row? Because, to be honest with you, I thought Skid Row was just an 80s metal band. I didn't realize. I didn't realize that it was an actual thing. I think it was. I always thought it was something that people would describe as the bottom. I didn't know Skid Row was an actual place. I was like, hey, you got to be careful. You'll end up on Skid Row. That's where things go to die. But it sounds like it's alive and kicking. It's a place where people go.
It is, and you should see it now. I actually took a video when I was just down there 2 weeks ago. I'll show it to you. There was just 10 times the people there than when I was there.
Really?
Yeah.
So just in the
last
last
5
5 years.
Yes. Yep. It's incredible. A lot of hunger and just poverty. It's really sad, and I think that's why I have a lot of empathy for the homeless.
Yeah.
Because I was one of them. I went through that. I met a lot of good people that were homeless because they weren't just drug addicts. One of my buddies owned a restaurant, and his wife got killed, and it set him in kind of a tailspin, lost the restaurant, ended up on the streets. I know there was another guy that his family got killed in a car wreck, wife and 2 kids.
Oh.
He ended up on the streets, So you have to have empathy for some of these people because you don't know what happened.
Well, I
what got
agree
them
with
there,
that. And in fact, if you think about the logic of it, nobody chooses that life, right?
No, absolutely
nobody
not.
wakes up and thinks, things are pretty good. I think I'm going to go live down on Skid Row.
I'm going to get that corner spot.
So you're absolutely right that there are reasons why people are there, and if we can't understand them, we should at least not judge them.
Absolutely.
So how do you find your way out of Skid Row?
Well, first off, let me just tell you how many times I survived. I overdosed 13 times that I remember while I was in L.A.
Wow.
I've been hit with Narcan 28 times. The first time they had to hit me with Narcan 7 times. I finally woke up after 30 minutes. They said I was gray, not blue. I was gray. Came out of it, and the worst withdrawal I've ever had in my life. I was just convulsing, just horrible. But so getting through all of that, I started, and this is going to sound a little weird, but this is where my spirituality started. I started having these weird feelings that it was like a bird in the sky was watching me, like somebody was watching over me, and something good was going to happen. And my friends would ask that question: are you ever going to get off Skid Row? Are you ever going to? Do you think you'll ever see yourself being a normal citizen again? And I'd say, I think my father's going to hire some private investigators and find me. And they'd be like, okay, whatever.
So at this point, your dad has no idea where you are?
No idea. I've been off the grid for 2 years. And, well, that's exactly what was happening. My dad had hired a couple investigators to find me.
So you had that premonition.
I had that premonition, absolutely. Wow. And I'd have guys, because they were looking for me for quite a while, and some of my friends would come up and they'd be like, hey, dude, there's some investigators looking for you. And I'd be like,
so when you're talking about,
it's okay. I know what it's for. I wasn't scared.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
You weren't worried.
When you're talking about friends, you're talking about friends on Skid Row. Because at this point, have you?
No, I'd moved to Venice Beach by this time.
Okay.
Yeah, I lived on the beach for 9 months.
We made it to the beach,
living the life.
But had you cut off all communication with back home and friends and family, or did you ever get a chance to call them and say, "Hey, look, I'm still alive"?
You know what? I called my dad once, about 2 months after I'd left, just to let him know I was okay. And then I remember it was like Christmas, and I was going to call, and I never did. And then it ended up it was Christmas again, and I was going to call, and I never did. And so I was off the grid for 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So these were friends that you met on the streets.
There was 4 guys that I literally ran with for a year and a half.
Yeah.
That I would call friends,
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, they were struggling with the same struggle as you had.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. And I saw some of them after I got sober, like 6 months after I got sober. And they were crossing the street in front of me. And I started crying. Like, they looked horrible. The meth and the heroin had just, destroyed them.
Yeah.
And it was so sad to me.
So you're living on the beach in Venice. People are walking around asking about you. You had a premonition that your dad was going to hire a private investigator to come find you.
Yep.
Do they eventually find you?
They do. I'm on Venice Boulevard one night, and this van pulls up, and the guy comes out and says, "Hey, do you guys know where Seneca Higley is?" And I said, "You got him." And they showed me a picture of my daughter and my dad together, and I just broke down. And I was so ready. I jumped in that van, and they took me to rehab.
That's amazing.
Yep. And I was ready,
So, you're getting emotional now. So they showed you a picture of your daughter. And how long had it been since you've seen your daughter?
2.5 years.
And there's your daughter with your father.
Yeah.
And it just wrecked you.
Yeah, it wrecked me. But, so I get there, and it was still hard for me. I didn't call my dad for like 3 weeks. I was just in this state of mind that I had been on drugs for 2.5 years and like this horrible environment. And here I am in this rehab, and I just didn't know what to say. I was still kind of angry. I felt like this is his way of, making amends for the DNA deal. And, so it took me a minute to start thinking clearly, for sure. But so I went
just the stress alone of living on the streets that long takes a toll on a person's mind, not to mention trying to detox the chemicals from your body. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised it only took that long before you could call.
Yeah.
What did you say when you called?
I just said, "How you doing?" And my dad wasn't much of a talker. And for about 6 months, he really didn't say much. It was more of a yes or no. I'd ask him how he's doing, this and that. And so about 7 months into sobriety, I asked him, I says, "Are you ever going to talk to me?" And he goes, "Well, you're probably just going to lie to me." And I said, "Dad, I am working a program. I'm 7 months sober. I'm doing everything I can to get my life back and to become that kid that you were, that son that and I said, but I need you to communicate with me so that we can work on this together because I can't do it alone." And so he finally started talking to me, and we started repairing our relationship,
So how long did you spend in rehab?
I spent 90 days, and then I spent 9 months in a sober living, and then I got a sober roommate for a year, and then my dad needed me, and so I left L.A. and went to take care of him. And I worked at ARC treatment place while I was there. I loved it. I enjoyed it. I was thriving. I really was. I was thriving. It was probably some of the best times that I've felt so far. I was healthy, spiritually, mentally, financially. Everything was going good. Then my father asked me like 3 times. He's like, "I think I need your help." And so I left LA and I went back to Idaho to take care of him. And,
tell me about the time you moved in with your dad.
It was challenging. I was ready. Okay. I was ready. I had a strong recovery. But my father was an alcoholic and he drank vodka every day. Everybody knew him. He always had his flask with him. And so he couldn't walk very good. He was having heart issues. Everything was kind of breaking down. So it was challenging, but I never had the urge to drink. There was vodka in front of me every day, but I never had the urge to drink. The entire time that he was alive,
How do you account for that?
Well, I had a strong recovery. I did the 12 steps. I had a sponsor. I had a Zoom group that I did every night. And we moved to Havasu, and I did the same thing there. Excuse me. And then we moved back to Idaho. My dad was a snowbird, so we go back and forth. I think it was my higher power. I pray. I believe in my God is the universe, light, energy, the angels. I've been in 3 rollover accidents where I should have died. I've overdosed over 13 times.
Been stabbed by a guy named King?
Been stabbed by a guy named King. I've broke my neck twice, my back once. I've broken over 42 bones in my body. I have 4 plates in my body and screws. I've had over 500 stitches in my head, my torso. There's like this purpose. There's this reason I'm here. And I think it was to help my father when he needed me the most, towards the end there. And so I did, and we got to rebuild our relationship and that trust, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful thing. And then June 2nd, he passed away, and I was with him. And it's been hard for me to get over that sight, his eyes, when he took that last breath. Yeah. And then I did CPR on him for 20 minutes. So it's been hard. But I've been doing this Tony Robbins stuff challenge. And, there was a lady on there that lost her 3-year-old daughter to cancer. And this lady was being so positive, and she talked about how she changed the story. She changed the story, the way, the perspective. She got to spend 3 beautiful years with that little angel, And then now she gets to share the rest of her life helping other people, with this tragedy. I got to spend the best time with my dad. I got to rebuild everything. He wasn't alone when he died. And that's a miracle. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's a miracle, because I shouldn't be here. And so it was just a beautiful thing to be able to get back and do all that. And now I'm working through this.
And this was just June 2nd last year.
June 2nd last year, yeah.
So it hasn't even been a year yet.
No.
Did you guys ever have a conversation about your recovery? Was there ever a time when he sat down and said, Seneca, I'm proud of you, man?
He did. The last 2 months, he would tell me that he loved me and he was proud of me every day. And for my father, he was a hard man. He never told me he loved me, ever. So that was just, pretty amazing, pretty beautiful as well.
After hearing your laundry list of injuries, it is amazing that you're here today to share your story. Yeah. You brought up your daughter, so I've got to ask, how's the relationship with her?
Amazing. My ex-wife wouldn't let me talk to her for a year of recovery. So the last 2 years, I've regained that relationship. She knows that her dad is he doesn't drink. She's never seen me high or drunk. And I'm never angry. I show her love. I tell her I love her all the time. I'm trying to break that cycle. Yeah. Trying to break that cycle. And, it's been good. I did get away. I got away from AA for about 4 months and tried to do it on my own. And I was getting up every morning. I was praying. I was meditating. Make my bed first thing. Never gone away from this. Make my bed, pray, meditate, exercise. And I was doing this on my own. And I got this deep, deep depression. I was in Havasu all by myself. And I did decide to take a drink. This was like 30 days ago. And I'll tell you exactly what it did, because I thought, I've got the power. I'm good. I'm almost 3 years sober. I'm strong. I'm doing all this stuff right. And what it did was it brought that obsession right back. So for 3 days in a row, I wasn't going to drink. And then I ended up buying a 6-pack. I didn't get drunk. I drank like a gentleman, but it created the obsession. The obsession. And so I looked at my phone. I got my daughter on my phone. I said, I ain't going to do this. And so I took action, and I have a friend in LA, and I went and I worked with all these guys, and I did 19 meetings in 14 days. I did this Tony Robbins challenge. I exercised. I hiked Malibu. I just immersed myself right back into the 12 steps of AA.
It seems, and I'm not a therapist, but my good friend is, a lot of this, your life has been a solo journey. And it seems like what you've always been looking for is connection. And it seems when you are in the rooms of the 12 steps, or if you're surrounded working with that, or even when you were living on Skid Row, you ran around with 3 guys, is that you're looking for connection. And I think connection seems to be a big thing that you need in your life. And I think that's what we all need.
Well, I think, I have this connection with my higher power, right? And I was doing all these things. What I'm missing, the great thing about relapse is a part of recovery.
Sure.
A lot of people do. It's what you do with that mistake. Do you learn from it? Do you see? I got to identify exactly what I stopped doing. I stopped going to meetings. I stopped calling my sponsor and, working with others. It's exactly what I stopped doing. Made it crystal clear what I had to do. Yep. Absolutely. So I dove right back in, and 30 days later, I am so happy.
Good for you, man. And you know what that is? The cognitive psychology that Seneca is sharing today is just off the charts. It's how you think about things. The way he's thinking about that relapse is beautiful because it brings acutely into focus what you need to do to remain the person you want to be and to be there for other people. That's wonderful.
Do you know how brave it is of you to talk about that relapse? Because a lot of people won't. Because
they'll wait till it's been 10 years ago and they'll talk about a relapse as if
30 days out. Like, I'm proud of you, and I know what kind of strength and courage it takes to make that statement. And the reality is I get people all the time reaching out through Facebook or whatever it is talking about their relapses, and they don't want to tell anybody. And I go, listen, relapses happen. They do. The whole goal with a relapse is not to go back to Skid Row, not to go all the way back to the beginning. Mm-hmm. It's to learn what you need to learn and then keep moving forward. Mm-hmm. But so many people don't. And I was just talking to a guy here in the building before we started this podcast, and we were talking about relapses because he's a buddy of mine that had a friend that relapsed and overdosed and died. Mm-hmm. And I said, for people who don't understand that, imagine you've been on a 3-month diet, and your jam was cookies. And one day you decide, I'm going to have one cookie. Mm-hmm. And you have a cookie, and you're like, that was pretty good. Since I've already broke it today, I might as well have 2.
All or nothing.
And then it's 2, it's 3, and then it's the sleeve.
Yep.
Now, what unfortunately a lot of society does, they wake up the next day and they go, well, I've already broke it, so I might as well run with it for a bit and then I'll get back on it.
Right.
But then they don't get back on it, and then what they do, that's why, I'm a victim of that too. That's why my weight will fluctuate. It'll go up and down because for some reason we don't jump right back on that horse.
Yeah. Well, personality, mentality, the two of you guys have something in common. It's go big or go home, right?
Yeah.
Both of you have that all-in mentality, which when it's focused on something productive, it's untouchable. Yeah, absolutely. But when it's focused on a box of Oreos, then they're gone pretty quick, right?
Oh, yeah. And so I'm amazed that you're doing so well. You look healthy. You seem like everything's going good. So what does life look like for Seneca today?
Man, life today is, I'm focused on being a father, raising my daughter. I get the opportunity to be the best dad ever, and she loves me. She tells me she loves me, and I get to tell her I love her. She knows she's safe when she's around me. Today I get to be a good friend. I get to focus on investments. I get to focus on things that I want to do. I'm pretty motivated and listen to a lot of podcasts and trying to set myself up for success and let my money make money for me, So today's good. This time right now is good. I'm actually going to go up to SOAR. You've heard of SOAR, that gym?
We've had them on a lot.
Yes. Yeah. Justin, those guys. Chris Hill.
Yeah.
Going to start going to their place and try to create some more community because that's what I need. I need to dive back into helping the homeless. I did that when I was in L.A. every Friday. So I've identified what is my problem, and I went through, and I think I was going through a lot of the stages of grief, and I think it was the depression part, that really kind of got me, and I was just lonely, and I was isolated, and I decided to drink, So it's rigorous honesty in Alcoholics Anonymous. Mm-hmm. I could have just not even said anything and kept going, but I wanted to show that we do relapse, and we got to learn what we did wrong, identify the problem, and move forward.
But what people don't understand is the dangerousness of not saying anything. Because I'm just thinking if my situation was the same as your situation, no, I haven't relapsed, and I'm coming up on 5 years. I'm not even had NyQuil, nothing in my system. But had I decided to drink and came on and did this podcast, I would feel like a fraud. Mm-hmm. And then I've also, the addict part of my brain goes, I got away with that.
Yeah. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. So maybe it's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
Justification.
And they start piling up.
Yeah, I got away with it.
I could probably do it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And maybe it won't be as bad as the last time. But the fact that you put it out there, ownership of it, and putting it out there is amazing. I mean, to me, this is the most crucial part of this podcast, is that statement right there.
Yeah, I
is
agree.
that he was brave enough and strong enough to talk about it now. Because had you not, and gone back home, and the podcast released, and everybody listens to it and tells you how amazing you are, inside, without knowing that whole thing, I believe that would eat at you.
Your mom knew about it.
It's hard to run anything back.
How can you do a podcast and talk about my mom? Your mom, yeah.
But there's a few people that I've told, it's it's one of those things, you go to AA meetings and it's anonymity, but there are people that support you, love you, and help you that need to know.
Yeah.
Well, there's power in the idea of radical honesty.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to be 100% honest. Radical honesty leads to ownership. You own your success, you own your mistakes, and you are less attached to that mistake in a shameful way.
Oh, like the weight lifted off my shoulders. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And now it can work for you.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
Mistake can inform you of what not to do, and what to do in the future.
And the thing he said, it was freeing to him.
Yeah.
For everybody else, it's uncomfortable. I mean.
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah, you know what I mean? But that's the one thing about it. It's like, no, this is my journey. And it's like, we talked about my mom. I remember right out of rehab, I called my mom. She goes, thank God we're not going to have to do this again. And I go, And she goes, what do you mean? And I go, you want me to tell you that I'm never going to drink again, so it makes you feel easier.
Yeah. Her security.
Your security. Yeah. And I can't do that, because then that makes me uneasy, and because the reality is I don't know, and I can sit here and I've got my job back in my life and everything but I don't know.
I could be gone pretty quick.
I can tell you right now I don't want to. I've got the tools in place, and I haven't, and I don't see myself doing it, but I cannot promise you.
Right.
All I can do is give you the best I've got.
Just for today.
Yep, and everything seems to be going good, and I love my life, and I'm grateful for it, and I'm blessed, and I'm thankful, and I want to be the guy you can bet on.
Yeah.
And well, you're an inspiration to a lot of people, too.
Well, and you are as well, and I'm proud that you stopped by and shared your story. So thank you very much, Seneca. I mean, you're an amazing man and a true friend, and I thank you for your friendship.
You're welcome.
Dr. Matt, what are your thoughts on Seneca?
Oh, man, he's all those things that you just said and more. I'm grateful for you being so honest on the show, because I wonder if that's hard for a lot of our guests to be that honest. And if you're a former guest listening, I appreciate everything you've come on and shared. But I appreciate Seneca being so honest today and actually demonstrating the power of positive thinking and reframing. I think the way part of your recovery and grief with your father is to reframe that, to think like that was time that was precious that you got to spend with him, and you got to be with him there at the end, and you were there for him. And now you're there for your daughter, and I think that's just a beautiful message to share with everybody.
Well, thank you.
Any thoughts, Seneca?
Oh, I'm just blessed to be here, man. This has been super cool. I haven't been on a microphone for a while, so.
We love you. Thank you very much, and thank you for stopping by and listening to another episode of Project Recovery. In case you forgot, Project Recovery is what?
It's a KSL podcast.
Give us a little chant real quick.
You can have $1 here now. Somebody give a $25 at a dollar. You can $25 at a dollar, $25 at a dollar, $27.50, $27.50, $3,000 here, $3,000 here, and I sold $27.50.
Yeah.
The contents of this program are for informational purposes only. The program is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, licensed therapist, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard on this program. KSL does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on the program. Reliance on any information provided on the program is solely at your own risk.